Welcome to today's CA Tools webinar. My name's Josh Osborne and I'm the Product Manager for the CA Tools here at Central Innovation. And welcome to our Getting Creative with the CA Tools webinar. Today we're going to be looking at a couple of the CA tools and how you can use them to allow you to design things more freely inside Archicad. We're going to be looking at the Doors and Windows tool, the Coverings tool, and the Cabinets tool. So we'll have a look at how you can use those to do things that either you can't do out of the box with Archicad or things that are just difficult to do. If you have any questions, please enter those in the chat panel, and towards the end I'll check in there and see if there's anything that I can answer while we are live. But thanks for coming. I'm going to be using Archicad 28 today, but pretty much everything we're going to see also applies to older versions. So if you're not using Archicad 28, you'll still be able to use pretty much everything you see during today's session. So, starting with the Doors and Windows tool, first of all, why might you want to use our Doors and Windows tool? Obviously, Archicad has quite a lot of doors and windows built into it. So why might you want to use ours? Well, one of the first things that you need to do whenever you place any window or door in a project is decide what object you want to place. As you may know, if you are using the default Windows and Doors libraries, this means the first decision that you have to make is to choose what structure of window you're going to use. There's quite a few different windows available in the basic folder and then several others further on from that. And essentially it means that the very first thing you need to do before placing any window is to choose what kind of window you want to use before you've even thought of anything else. And so one of the first things that we aim to do with our window and door tool is to make it so that you don't have to make that decision right away. You can make it at any point during the design process. And our general philosophy with the tools is to make it so that at any point with any of them, you can choose what you want to do. We don't take design decisions or choices away from you. We allow you to keep your options open, essentially, for the whole course of your usage of that object in Archicad. So, as I say, with the Doors and Windows tool, the first decision that you have to make with our window tool as to what you want to place is just if you want to use our window tool. This single object will allow you to build a number of different structures and varieties of windows, so you don't have to make that decision as to how many panels there will be or how it will be split up or anything early on. You can make that decision at any point in the process, and you can change your mind at any point in the process as well. So this is our CA Tools window, and this is the starting point for everything that we're going to do. So what we aim to do with the tool is allow you to build whatever structure of window you need to for whatever case you are looking at. So for instance, I'm just going to reset this one to the default settings. And I'm going to go to the glazing panel layout because this is where you'll start in most cases with your windows and doors. And this is where you build the structure of your window. So you can see at the moment on this left side, we have sort of a preview of how the window is going to be laid out. So this is showing us the structure of the window. At the moment, we have the single piece selected, and you can see on the right at the moment that it is set to be a fixed pane. But we can go through here and start building this window up now to get it to wherever we want it to. And so the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a second panel. So I just hit the plus button down at the bottom here. I now have two panels, which you can see in my preview here as well. And I can select one of them and change what it does. So I can select this panel, go in here and change it to an awning, and then set it to form a grid. And you'll see that it creates exactly that. So we have our fixed panel on the left still, and 3 awning panels in a grid on the right. Using this same system, we can also add additional parts. So I will insert a panel below the one that we have there. And then I can set this one to be something different as well. So for instance, we can set that one to louvers. And we're just building this up as we go. At this point, we can now choose to place the window. Just pop it there. So we have that structure selected. But I can go back into the settings for this window at any point and completely revise that entire structure. So if I change my mind about everything that I've done and I want to go in and create something different again, I can do that too. So let's make the middle pane a left-hung casement, and the right one can be a slider. And let's make the fixed panel on the left be 2. Click OK. And it's completely changed the structure of our window. So we can easily sort of freeform change the entire structure of our window at any point in the process. Now the size and dimensions of this are defined in the same way that any window is. So just these settings here, 1200 and 1500 at the moment. So you can define the size of your window here. You can also define the size of specific panels while you're creating them as well. They're all set to available width at the moment, but if I select this middle panel and say I want this to be a fixed width, I can define that width here. So I can say this one should actually take up half of the size of the window itself, and then it stretches the other two out because they're set to fit. So again, we can very easily change the whole way that this works as we go. We don't have to switch to a different object or anything like that. This also means that you can stagger the amount of detail that you put into this window. So you can start out by placing the window, even just using the default settings. If all you know is that you need to have a window, you can place the window in there, knowing that later on you can add as much detail as you want. So this is great for very early on in the design process. You place down a sort of a placeholder window, and then you can revisit that at multiple points in the life cycle of the project to add additional detail to that. So we can place it using the default settings. We can come back later, go in here and add the additional panels that we want. Let's add a panel above there. And just keep going. And this applies to all of the settings that we're going to look at in the windows and doors. We can come back at any point and change any of those as we go. So again, the idea here is that we don't want to take any decisions away from you. We want you to be able to decide to change the whole thing at any point or anything like that. Now, aside from the setup of the glazing panel itself, there are plenty of other things that you can do in the windows and doors. I'm not going to go through all of the settings today just because there are quite a large amount of them. But we'll have a look at some of the main ones. So obviously the glazing panel layout is where we are defining the setup and the layout of our window itself. If you want to control the actual shape and size of the window, that's where this shape setting here comes in. And we have options for the way that the joints work, but also for the way that the head and sill work. We have quite a range of options for the shape here. So we can do something like falling to right, which will allow us to add an angle to the top of the window. So if I make that fall 300, we now have an angled top window. So this is very handy. Again, because we're just using the one object, we don't have to worry about switching out to something else. We've just got a angled top to the window that we already had. This would be handy for fitting under a roof or something like that. For the two falling options to left or right, you can also enter the drop value, which is C here, or you can enter the angle. So if you know either of those, you can just enter that, and it will automatically figure out what the corresponding drop height is for that. So that's nice and easy to use. We also have a couple of different arch options. So a regular arch, a Gothic arch, and several others there. We've got rounded corners. Um, we've got a stepping here, which will put steps in at each panel. And then we also have polygonal, so you can define the shape yourself. You can see that we have is a list of all of the panels that are available in this window, and then we can set the A and B values, which is to say the drops of each sort of node of the window to construct a completely customized shape if you would like as well. If I do something like choose the arch option, you'll also see that we have the option to inset the sides on these. So rather than just doing an arch top, you can also add in an inset like this, and it will place like that. So you can see it has a lot of control to make whatever shape and size of windows that you want. You're not limited by the type of object that you chose or anything like that. We can also do things like add, what are they called again? Add glazing bars, sorry, it's the phrase I'm looking for, to that. So you'll see again, we have that same preview of the structure of the window. We can go through and we can choose to add glazing bars to some panels as well. So we can choose this one on the side here, and this one at the top, and say that actually we want to do an edge grid around those, which you can see there. We can also define what the edge grid should be. So we can say these ones should just run across, let's say just across the tops. So you can see it does that. So it gives us a nice looking edge grid there. And then when I look at it in 3D, you'll also see that we have some purple dynamic hotspots here, or pink if you prefer. And we can modify the shape sort of on the fly in 3D as well. So if I grab this node here, you can see it allows me to move it around. So I can modify that as I go. So I'm going to work with this window that was already placed here. And what we were doing was just modifying the shape. So I set an arch top here, and a bit of an inset. And I was just showing that you can grab the hotspot here and move the shape of that in and out to whatever you need. So if you want to define that graphically in 3D, you have the option of doing that as well. Obviously, you can enter it numerically using the values here as well. So it gives you plenty of options to work with there. Now we set some glazing panels before. One of the other things that we just recently added to the tool was the option to draw visibility strips as well. So these might be called different things depending on your region. Some places call them vision panels or manifestations or something, but in quite a lot of places it is becoming a requirement to display these on Windows, and so we've added the option to add those recently. So this again shows us that same preview that we've had before. We can select the panels that we want to apply it to, and then we can go in here and choose what we want to apply. So you can use the generic option, which will just apply essentially a rectangular shape onto the window. You can see it in 3D as well as in elevation views because it's actually drawn onto the window. So it will show up in any schedules you generate or anything like that. And obviously because it's actually on in 3D, it'll show in renders and BIMX and that sort of thing as well. So if we choose the generic option, you can just place that rectangle at whatever height you need it to be and whatever width you want the panel to be. And you can also define the surface that it uses. We also have the option to use a complex profile. So this would be very useful if you want to draw on maybe some signage or like a company name or something like that. You can create a complex profile of whatever shape it is that you want to draw on there, and then have that applied instead of having just the rectangular strip. So at the moment I just have default complex profiles in here, so I don't have any trademark logo or anything like that. but if I select one of these, you'll be able to see how it applies to the window um, across like that. And there's controls over how it will apply that visibility strip across all of the panels as well. So do you want it to be mirrored? Where do you want the anchor point for the profile to be? Do you want it to repeat across the length of the window? And if so, what's the spacing between them and that sort of thing? So there's plenty of control to do that as well. But in most cases, probably all you need is generic profile anyway, which will just apply that there. So you can do those too. We also have plenty of control over the size of the actual framing of the window. So if I go into the frame settings here, you can see we've got a sort of diagram showing what each setting is going to do. And you can step through all of the settings here and define exactly how you want the frame to work. You can control how the glass works, so how much glazing there should be, single, double, or triple. And then once you choose the amount of glass there should be, also what are the settings of that? So how thick is each piece of glass? What's the space between them and that sort of thing. We can also apply trims to the windows. So we've got the options to apply head moldings here, jam moldings, exterior trims, and sills using these settings here. So we can go through and say, let's add a colonial head trim, and it will apply that all the way across. And then we can also apply a sill, half round sill, let's go for. And we can define how that works as well. So it controls the overhang at the edges and the angle of the sill itself and how deep it is and that sort of thing. Interior trims work similarly. We can go through and we can apply a profile to the interior of the window and choose where that will be applied on the window itself. And then we also have the display options. So this will let you control the way that your windows and doors look in your project. So we can choose whether the windows and doors should be shown to be open or closed. We can choose how the symbols work. So things like how the arrow shows on sliding windows and that sort of thing. If we go to model display, that will let us control the 3D and elevation aspects of the windows as well. Window opening margins are controlled here, what you want to show in plan view, so you can turn off certain aspects of it for the plan view if you would like, and you can also control how the wall opening looks. And a lot of these will work with model view options as well, so you can change the way that your windows and doors work depending on their view. So I'm just going to hit OK. We'll be able to see the changes that we made there, so you can see that head molding that I placed on it and the sill. There's our visibility strip running through the middle there, and if I go inside, we'll be able to see the interior trim as well, which is going all the way around the window. So as you can see, there's plenty of control over what you can design with your what you can design with your window. We don't really remove options that you might want to do. You can design something as horrible and complicated as you want, or something as good looking as you want. We just give you all of the options to be able to do whatever you need to do. This also applies to the door tool. I've been mostly looking at Windows at the moment, but the door tool works in a very similar way. We're not going to go through all of the settings on the door because, again, they are very similar to the window. If you look at the menu here, you'll see that a lot of the settings are the same, but we do have some extra things that the door can do. So obviously, rather than placing multiple glazing panels, we instead place a door, and then we can choose to put side lights, overlights, and corner lights on our window. And we can choose how that will work by setting the settings here and the dimensions for those. With the doors themselves, we choose what kind of doors we want to place. So we can choose, for instance, bifolds. We can put 2 on each side. And you will see the display for those. So you can build whatever kind of doors or windows you want. We can easily change back to something else like a double swing single door. So again, you don't have to decide what kind of door you are going to use before you place it. You can place a sort of a default settings door at the start of the process, and then come back later and define it more specifically as to how you actually want that door to work. We've also got the CI Tools door exterior. So when you go into the door tool, as we saw before, the window tool has just one object available. The door tool has three, just because there are some specific cases where you might want to use something else. The CI Tools door is what we use in most cases for doors. However, we do have a garage door, which the name probably is self-explanatory for that. It's for doing garage doors. It can do roller doors, tilt panels, and sectional doors, and it will let you define most of the settings of how those work. So if you want to put in glazed panels on a tilt door or anything like that, you have the option to do that. You can define the way the frame works and all of that sort of thing. Put trims on the same as you could in the regular door. But the other one that you might want to use is the door exterior object. This is actually just a copy of our window tool. One of the panel types that you can place using the window tool, so you can see all of the regular window types, but one of the types of panel you can place is a door panel, and that's what this uses here. The reason that this is here is because quite a lot of people want to be able to design a door that has a lot of complex glazing on it, which you can't easily do with the door tool, because obviously it just lets you do overlights and side lights. If you want to do something more complicated than that, maybe you have multiple windows that need to go into it or something, and the door tool is not well suited to it. The door exterior, which is essentially just the window tool, will let you do that, but it will do it as a door element in Archicad, so that when you schedule it, it will show up as a door. And when you export data about it or send it to IFC or something, it will come through as a door rather than as a window. So if you do need that extra flexibility, that's available in the door exterior object here. And it works exactly the same way that the window tool does. All the settings are the same. The only difference is that it defaults to have a single door panel in it rather than a window panel. All right, so that covers off the doors and windows panel. As I mentioned before, if you have any questions, please enter them in the chat, and I will come back and check on those at the end of the session and answer any that I can while we are online. But for now, we're going to move on to the coverings tool. So the coverings tool is something that will allow you to add extra detail to your project, extra realistic 3D detail, that is, to your project, so that you can make it look more like it will be when it's actually built. It will save you time in the sense that it will do a bunch of the detailing for you, but it also will make your model look like it will actually be built. For instance, with actual 3D elements cladding your walls and roofs. So we're going to start with the roof covering. What we do for that is that we choose the element that we want to attach the covering to. So you can see at the moment I have a roof placed here. It's got a surface on it, which is a texture of corrugated iron, but obviously it is just a texture. It's a flat texture. So if we cut a section through that, we're just going to see the shape of the slab. We're not going to see the shape of the corrugation. As soon as we zoom in too much or try and do a render, we'll see that the texture is not particularly high resolution and that sort of thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a CI Tools roof covering on that to give it actual 3D cladding detail. So select my roof, and then I just go to the CI Tools menu, go to Coverings, and choose the roof covering. That will bring up the options for the roof covering. We'll just reset the default just in case. And now we can choose what kind of cladding we want to put on this roof. So I'm just going to go through and set the cladding to be corrugated metal. I'll leave the settings at default for now, just so that we can see how it goes, and then hit OK. And what that will do is it will place this 3D cladding onto our roof. So you can see we have actual 3D corrugation here now. And we also have the roof accessories placed as well. So as well as the cladding placed on the roof, we also have flashing placed up the side here. We've got edge boards running along the edges here, and we also have gutters on the lower edges as well. So it just makes the model much more realistic to reflect what we'll actually be building. And of course, as I mentioned, it gives us a bunch of extra detail that we don't have to draw. So if I jump to a section view, you can see here that our roof now has all of this additional detail that we didn't have to draw up for it. So you can see the edge board here. You can see the framing being placed along the length of the roof. You can see the representation of the corrugate here. We've got the gutter showing there. And then up at the top, you'll be able to see the ridge flashing as well. So it's saving us a bunch of time there. Also making it look more realistic at the same time, and making it look nicer in 3D as well. And we can do the same on the other roof also. So if I just go up and select this roof system here, we can do the same thing. So we just go CI Tools, Coverings, Roof Coverings, and we can go through and choose how we want that to work. So we've got corrugated metal chosen at the moment, but we have a couple of different cladding options. We've got flat, which will just place a flat piece of cladding, ribbed metal, shingles, tiles, and Spanish tiles. They'll all do pretty much what you would expect. You can see them in the preview here. There's our shingles. A little bit difficult to see because they're the same color. So let's override those so that you can see the difference. There we go. So you can see there's sort of randomized shingles being placed there. The tiles work in the same way, and Spanish tiles as well. So we can choose from any of these options, and then once we choose what we want to use, we can further define the way that that cladding works by setting the dimensions here. So for the ribbed option, we've got the settings for the size of each rib, so the width at the base and at the top. So at the base, we've got 50 at the moment and 25 at the top. We wanted to do something like a standing seam. We could make those just equal to each other. So something like this, for instance. If we go into the shingle settings, you'll see that we have similar settings for the size of the shingles. The tiles work similarly, both types of tiles. And the corrugated metal that we saw before, you can define the width between each wave, as well as the depth of it and the thickness of the actual corrugate. Flat will just place a flat rectangular piece, so the only thing you can define is the thickness of it. And then none, which seems like it wouldn't be very useful, is useful if you want to place a covering that places all of the accessories. So it places, say, the flashings or gutters or something like that, but you don't actually want to clad the roof in any way. You can still use none and get it to do those accessories for you without having any actual roof cladding placed. So for this one, we'll go with shingles. Actually, we'll go with tiles, and we can change those if we need to. I'm going to stick with what we've got here for now, though, and just hit OK, and that will apply the shingles to this roof. And again, you see it applies those real 3D shingles to our roof. You can see that they're all casting shadows on each other slightly and that sort of thing. So these are actual 3D elements. We can cut through them and that sort of thing as well. And we get those accessories again as well. So we've got the flashings running down the sides, the gutters at the bottom edge, and that sort of thing also. We can also control how these accessories work on the roof by controlling the way that the edges are interpreted as well. So if I select this covering element here, I can go to the covering, edit covering edges, and I can change the way that the edges work. So at the moment, at the top, we have a junction at the ridge. We've got barges at each of the ends, and we have a gutter at the bottom, which is pretty much what we would like. But if we want to change anything, we can just go through and select the edge that we want to change and change it to something else. So for instance, if we want to have a gutter running down each side, we can do that. And if on the top edge, we actually want it to be an apron, say maybe it's meeting another roof, we can do that. Or we could have no edge applied to it at all. I'm not going to do that with this one, but if I hit OK there, that will replace both of the sides with gutters. So those will come down the side and then join the main gutter at the edge. This can be particularly useful for things like this one here. So you can see on our corrugate, we have flashing around here, but what we would really want is a gutter. So I'm just going to select that, go into the coverings, edit roof edges. And then on those two edges, we're going to set those to be an apron instead. And now we have those apron edges running around there. So it gives us plenty of control about how all of that works, while still giving us the ability to model all of those accessories and have those displayed. So that's the roof covering. We also have a wall covering available. I'm just going to jump to the floor plan view to do this because we need to do those in floor plan view so we can define what side of the wall they go on. So I'm going to select these walls here. And again, I'm just going to go CA Tools, Coverings, and choose the wall coverings. And this works in a very similar way to the roof. So we go through and choose the type of cladding that we want. The wall cladding selection is a little different to the roofs. So we have weatherboards here. And going through the list, we also have none. So the same as before, if you want to use it for accessories that it does, but not for the actual cladding, you can use none. Generic will place a generic rectangular piece. Boards and battens will allow us to place a board with battens spaced across it, and we can define the spacing and size of those battens. Bricks and blocks will allow us to model 3D bricks that run across our wall. Corrugated metal, same as it was on the roof. Logs, if you want to model a log wall, you can do that using these just by setting the size of those logs. Panels will draw a set out of panels. You can control the size of each panel and the set out and offset and that sort of thing using the settings here. Ribbed metal is the same as it was on the roof, so we can control the profile of the rib and that sort of thing. Two sorts of shiplap options, grooved or smooth. And when you choose those, you also have the option to control how the sizing of the boards works. If they're the same width all the way across, if you want them randomized or having a sequence of sizes. Shingles will allow you to add shingles and control those. You can also have those double coursed or singled. And then vinyl weatherboards or regular weatherboards, finally here. So we can select whatever type of cladding we want to go with here. I'm going to choose the weatherboards. I'll also choose to put some paint on these ones. By default, they will show using the color of their building material, but you can override that using this control here. They'll still be built using that building material. They just have this surface on top of them. And then when I once I click OK, I get the option to choose what side of the wall to place them on. So the exterior or the interior, it can't automatically tell which part of the wall is the interior. And even if it did, you may sometimes want to put them on the interior. Maybe you want to tile a bathroom or something. So it gives you the option to choose what side to put them on. I'm going to go with the outside for these ones. And you'll see in my floor plan view that I now have these coverings showing all the way around the building on my walls. And if I go back to 3D, we'll see those now as well. So we now have 3D weatherboards on all of the walls. So you can see those running across there. It's tracing the shape of the wall that it's placed on, so you don't need to worry about your windows and doors. It will cut out the space for those windows and doors. And you can also see that it is placing some sills on our openings as well. That's one of the other options in the wall covering tool. So if I go back in there and go to the opening settings, you can see that at the moment I've got it set to show brick sills on all of our openings. So this can be handy if maybe you have a bunch of different windows and doors placed on your project and not all of them have an option for sills. You can have the coverings apply sills instead. And the same as with the roof. This is also giving us, obviously it gives us something nice looking in 3D. It's casting shadows and that sort of thing. But it means that when we cut a section through, it's done a bunch of the work for us already as well. So if I go to the section view here, you'll be able to see there we go, that it now has 3D weatherboards placed on the walls, so you don't have to draw that up. The sill is showing there as well. So yeah, so it's adding a bunch of nice extra detail for us that we essentially don't have to draw. We just sort of get it for free for having that nicely modeled 3D stuff. Looks like my opening is sticking out a little bit too far on the side there. There's also plenty of control, similar to how we had with the roof tool. Plenty of control over how the wall covering works. So one of the main things that you might want to be able to do is to create splits, so to have multiple covering types on your walls. We have the option to do that. So obviously at the moment we are just placing weatherboards over the entire wall, but we can choose to split that up. So if I go to the configuration settings, I can choose split cladding. There's 4 options here: below openings and above openings, and below sill height and above sill height. So I can say I want to split below sill height and also above openings. And now in my settings, I have 2 additional wall cladding options. And those are the cladding options for those split areas. So we still have weatherboards on our main area, but if I look at below the sill, we can say actually that should be bricks and blocks. And let's make them reddish, so they look like bricks. And then above openings, we can say actually that should be panels, and they should be plywood, let's say. Hit OK. And then if I look at this, you can see here that at the sill height that's defined in the tool, the weatherboards now stop and turn into bricks and blocks that run down to the bottom there. And above them, it's a little bit hard to see because of these beams, but you can see the panels being shown above the windows there. So you can use this to create any number of combinations of coverings inside the single on a single wall. You can have multiple coverings placed across there to do whatever you need. And that cell height that we see there is just defined in the configuration here. So when we turn that on, we can also define what the height is that should apply to. One of the other things that we can do with the covering also is we can control the way that it traces the shape of that wall. So it will default to follow the wall on the base and the top. But if you need to cut it off at a certain point or something like that, you can also sort of override that as well. So we could say it should have a flat top and it should be a certain height. That one's going to be ridiculously high, obviously. But if I say 1800, whoops, it will cut off at 1800 instead. So you can see it's stopping at that point now. So you can also control the way that it follows the shape of the wall. So that is the coverings tool. There's a lot more to it. Obviously, we can jump into all of the settings of, excuse me, of, for instance, how the gutters work, what size they are, and that sort of thing. But that gives you an idea of what you can do and how it will look when you place those on your model. But the last thing I want to look at today is the cabinet tool. So the cabinet tool follows a very similar design methodology to the windows and doors, in that it will allow you to essentially design whatever you feel like designing. It's not going to make it so that you have to decide something very early on that you then later may want to change to and you can't. And so the way that it excuse me, the way that it primarily does that is by allowing you to set up a variety of modules in your cabinet. So I'm just going to select this one I have already placed here. And you can see that we have a single cabinet here, but it is showing a opening door on the left. We've got a stack of drawers in the middle, and we've got a sliding out bin module on the right, and these are all able to be done in a single object. We can change them at any point as well, similarly to how we did with the window tool. So if I go to my module view settings here, we can control how all of these work. So at the moment, we're looking at the dimensions of the module. If I choose any of these, we can define the width, We can split it into further modules and that sort of thing. We can control what type of thing it is. So this one's a drawer stack. If I select the one on the left, this one's a left hung door, and the one on the right is a bins single type. And we can change those to whatever we need to. So if we decide at a later point, actually we don't want a drawer stack, we want that to be open, we can do that. Sorry, that's an oven, not open. If we want it to be open, we can do that. Or we can place in any of these other types of modules here. Do a tambour door there. Whatever you need, you can swap to those. Let's just go back to a drawer stack for that one. We can choose how the fronts work. So for instance, on our door on the left here, we could select that and say that instead of having a flat panel, we want a glass panel, and it will draw that glass panel for us. We can see the inside of the module now, and we can also define the way that the handles work as well. So these are all using recessed handles, but we might decide that on the opening door module, we want something different. So we can come in here and say, actually, this one should be a deeple, and you can see, potentially you can see that that is now a deeple. We could say that actually that should be rotated 90 degrees. And let's insert it a little bit closer, and 20 there. And if I save those changes, you'll be able to see that there. So we've got a deeple there, we've got that glass front as well, and that sort of thing. So again, similarly to with the windows and doors, we can build up to wherever we need to at any stage in the process. So going back to this cabinet here, I'm just going to delete that. I'm going to place a brand new one using the default settings. The way that you get to the cabinet tool is via the cabinet tool in your toolbox. It won't be there by default. So if you have installed the CI tools the normal way, you can just go to your options menu, work environment, apply profile, and choose the CI tools profile. That will place the cabinet tool in here. We can just open that up. I'm just going to reset to default settings here. You can see we actually have a couple of different cabinet objects. The reason for that is essentially because the structure of the corner cabinets are different, so those do have to be separate objects, unfortunately. But the CI cabinet is what you will use in almost all cases for a regular rectangular cabinet. If you want a cabinet where you can define the entire shape of the outside envelope of it, you can also use the CI cabinet polygon, which looks the same as the regular one, but you can essentially, what you can see in the preview there, you can warp the outside shape of it to, say, fit under a stair or something like that. But we're going to go with the CI cabinet for now, so just select that and place one down. And essentially this is the starting point for your cabinet. So you could start off just by placing a cabinet as a sort of a placeholder, and then come back to it later and add as much detail as you want. We're going to stretch this one out to the width that we want it to be. So I'm just going to do that. And when I do, it will repeat the units across the width of the cabinet. You can control that behavior. You can get it to not do that if you would like. But in most cases, it probably is what you like. So at the moment, it's repeating 600 width units. I think it's 600 across the length that you give it. And then the last one will be however much space it can, depending on the size that we gave it. So we've got two 600s and then looks like a 500-ish unit at the end there, which is stuck on there. So we now have 3 modules to our cabinet. We still haven't done much extra work on it, so this might be all we need to start with. We're just placing a placeholder saying a cabinet will be here, but at any point we can come back in and start adding that detail. So everything will default to be a left hung door, I think. Yeah, everything is door left at the moment, but this is where we can go through and make some changes. So we can come back at whatever point and set what we actually want to have in here. So let's say that the one on the left is going to be open shelves. The middle one is going to be a drawer stack, and the one on the right is going to be a door right. And then we'll also say that the one on the right, we want to split it vertically. So I select that module, I hit this button here to split it into 2, And now we have two vertical units here, so we can say that we have those two doors there, and I'll just leave them as door rights at the moment, but I'm going to set them both to have glass fronts. So we now have those two there, and we've got our stack of drawers in the middle. Now with any of these modules that I set, we can also further change the settings. So we're not just stuck with a stack of drawers that work this way. We can control how that works by clicking this button here to go down to the actual settings for each of those module types. So the drawer stack is here, and we can control how that works. So you see a little preview of it here, but we are setting the number of drawers to 5, and then we're setting the sizings for those. So the top is 120, 2, 3, and 4 are 120, and the base is 120. In this case, because our actual height of our cabinet is taller than that, the bottom piece is actually stretching out to fit the size of the height that it has available. But we can define those heights here. So we could say that actually drawer number 3 should be 200 high. And you'll see that that now does that. So you can set those to whatever you need them to be. And then you can set the dimensions for the actual drawers individually each as well. The same applies to the other settings that we had here. So for instance, the fronts, we're choosing glass on this one, but we can define how glass works by going in here and modifying that. So you could see that we are showing a rectangular grid on this one. We can change that though. We could change to have an edge grid running around it, for instance. Oh, it's probably too small to show an edge grid. Yes, it is. But we can have edges. We can have an arch top, arches, elliptical. You could use a custom panel as well if you want to design your own. There's quite a few options available here. Let's go with diamond for now. So we can control how that works, and we can also control how the handles work as well. So going in the handle view here, that we're using recessed handles, so that's still there, but we can control how that works by going in here, choosing recessed, and then choosing how that works. So we can change the dimensions of it and the material that gets used, the surface that gets used on that. And the same applies to all of the types as well. So we can select the type that we want. We can modify the way that that works if we need to as well. So there's plenty of control over all of those aspects of the cabinet. Once we're happy with the modules that we have set out in the cabinet, we can then go further into the structure of it by defining the shelves and dividers that are in it as well. So I'm going to work with this one on the left here. So we select the module on the left, which is open, so we can see what we're doing. And we can define how we want shelves and dividers to work inside that module. So what we do for that is we define the amount of shelves and dividers we want. I'll say that we'll have 2 shelves and 1 divider, and then we're offsetting from the top by 200. So I make those settings there and then just hit this button here to add that in. So you can see we've got our offset at the top of 200, so it drops down. There's no divider there. Then we get our top shelf, our 2 shelves that we placed, and our divider running down the middle there, and everything's using panel 15mm at the moment. I can swap that out though. I could say that the shelves actually should be roll-out trays, for instance. It will place the rails for those. Maybe we want to have wire baskets or something. Just have some slats there. We can modify things like the offset. We could change our mind on how many shelves we want, and then just redefine that, and it will go through and make those changes. So it lets us control all of that. Yeah, so you can see we have slats running down inside this open unit here, and we've got our divider running right down the middle there. You can also see those changes to the glazing that I made before as well. So there's plenty of control over the way that the inside of the actual modules work. And then we can also go a little bit further again and add in extra detail to all of those pieces as well using the spaces settings. So I can come through here and I can say that on my slats on the left here, I want to place mugs on these ones here, I want to place a bunch of plates. And then on the bottom set, I want to place, oops, some spice chips. So again, this is just to add an extra detail to your model. If I hit OK there, you'll see those come in. So it will essentially just populate all of the parts of the piece you had selected with the things that you selected there. So you can see those coming through there. So again, similarly to the window tool and the door tool and the coverings tool and all of that, our goal is really to make it so that essentially we are not taking any decisions away from you. You can build whatever you want to, and that you can build them at any point in the process. You can start with almost no detail at all, almost no settings, just the size and nothing else. And then at any point later on, you can go through and bring it up to the level of detail that you wanted at any stage. All right, it looks like I have run out of time now. I'm just going to quickly see if we have any questions that I can answer while we are live. Just a moment. Okay, got a few questions here. Okay, the cabinet tool for doing wardrobes, you can sort of use it for doing wardrobes at the moment, but one of the things that you will probably run into, so you can use the shelves and dividers to build up quite a lot of the internal structure of the wardrobe, but one of the things that it can't do at the moment is place a single set of doors on the outside but have multiple modules behind. That is an area that we're actively looking into at the moment. So if you have any additional feedback on how you would like wardrobes to work, if you could get in touch with us by contacting our support desk, nz.support@centralinnovation.com, that would be great. Because yeah, that's an area that we know people want to be able to do. So that would be really handy to hear from you.